The one thing I want to talk with you a little bit about is my deal flow is still pretty light. And I followed, the main recommendations of posting on the Facebook groups as well as Craigslist. I know I need to do a better job at the follow-up side of things, and I intend to attack that pretty aggressively at the beginning of this week. And I was just wondering, is out because that's going to be relying on any current contacts that I have. Are there other methods that you would recommend that I engage in as well, just to like find more of these contacts for wholesalers?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know last week we looked at connected investors, right? Were you able to connect with anybody there?
I have connected with some over-connected investors. I haven't been super aggressive on, I've posted for sure, but I haven't necessarily looked for people and pursued them directly through connected investors, if that makes sense. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah, I'd recommend that. Go through connected investors,
Okay.
and also you might also do this through Facebook, but connected investors is a little bit easier to understand what their role is. You could
Okay.
also do it on bigger pockets, but I would message them and I would say, hey, my name's Jay. I'm investing in the Abilene market, looking to connect with wholesalers. I'm a cash buyer. Do you have any deals that I should consider in your market or in the Abilene market?
Yep. Okay.
And then at some point, particularly on connected investors, some of them just aren't going to respond because they're
Mhm.
not on there. Give them say a week or so to respond, but they're
Yeah.
just not as actively on that platform.
Okay.
But if they don't respond, just assume that they're not super active. But if they respond, that's great. Another thing you can do is ask for referrals. So referral sounds maybe even a little bit too formal for what we're talking about. Just ask if they know of anybody else that you should connect with. Say, hey, do you know of anybody else that you're aware of has some properties that I should consider right now? Especially if they say, oh, I don't have anything right now, but I'll keep you posted. That's a great in for you to then say, well, do you know of anybody that has something available right now or someone I should connect with? And that allows you to tap into their network as well. But you can do that on connected investors. You can do that on um, bigger pockets, like I mentioned.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, you could probably do it on Facebook, but it's really helpful to have the role. So how does that help?
Good. Yeah. I mean, I've done that method basically with Facebook. Anytime I see a
Right.
wholesaler pop up on Facebook, I'm messaging them directly. And that's probably produced more traction than anything else. So I'll do the same thing with connected investors. It's funny because with the asking for other folks who have deals, like if I'm talking to a realtor who also does it, they'll commonly hold it pretty tight to their chest.
Right.
Some folks have even been like, yeah, I know about wholesalers, but I don't know any. So
Right.
I'm trying to do that. That hasn't necessarily produced very much yet, but I think it's a great habit and consistent practice. So I'll
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. The
Uh,
thing is with wholesalers, when you're asking them directly and you're
mhm.
asking, do you know of anybody else I should connect with? If they don't have a deal, they don't have a deal, right? And so to a certain extent, you're connecting them with a competitor, but they're competing with the other wholesaler for the deal. If you find a good deal, you find a good deal, right? As a wholesaler,
Yeah.
because at to a certain extent, money's not going to be your issue, right? The luxury of the burr is you're able to recycle this money, and
Yeah.
so you might tell them like I use the burr method, and so usually I'm using hard money or private money to get into these. So usually capital on the front end isn't an issue. So if they've got a good deal, great, bring it to you, and you're welcome. You're open to evaluating whether or not that's something that you can work with. But they're not handing you off to go work with someone exclusively, right? It's not like a property
Right.
manager relationship or a realtor relationship.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'll keep plugging away at that and I'll get a little more aggressive on connected investors.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I would just go. I mean, treat it like you're hunting. I think at the beginning when you're just starting to build out your team, doing the basically they come to you method is really helpful. You post on a few groups, say, hey, I'm looking for wholesalers. Let me know who it is. right? Who are the good ones? That's helpful. They come to you. Then after that, you have to go hunt for them. So you go
Mhm.
find them, because that's essentially going to differentiate you, right? If you've got a list of 100 different wholesalers and Joe Bob over here has a list of 10, who's probably going to get the best deals? The one that has the most options, right? Options are good. If you've got options, you're able to pick between the good ones and separate out the bad ones. If you don't
Mhm.
have options, you only get to choose from the ones that you have, right? So that's one thing I'd say will be really helpful to you. The other thing is reasonably consistent follow up.
Yeah. Okay.
So that might be, for you, just finding out what works for you as far as your systems and your operations. For a while there, I did essentially every week, I would carve out a chunk of time that was just blocked on my calendar that said, reach out to wholesalers. And I would send them texts, emails, etc. And I'm in the inner, or the beginning parts of essentially automating that and putting it all on an email platform
Oh,
where I use Active Campaign for emails and for text messages and stuff like that. So I can text them, email them, send them a ringless voicemail, and actually just put that in their wheelhouse and say, hey, do you have anything that I should consider?
did you find that it was more onerous in the beginning with the consistent follow up, and then after a while you kind of like naturally now just the deal flow is happening, or do you feel like that is consistently you have to stay on top of that?
Um, yes, and I would
Okay.
say you've got to, in order for them to think of your name and send something to you, instead of just in a group blast email, actually message you on Facebook or shoot you a text message or a direct email to you. It takes a while for them to even remember who you are, right? And this is the same challenge of any business that's starting out trying to build their brand. You're essentially building your brand as an investor to them,
Yeah.
and they don't have time to twiddle their thumbs, right, and just play around because they're under contract. They've got a discrete amount of time that they need to get this thing done with, right, and they got to get it closed. So that's to a certain point. But the caveat there is, once you do a deal with somebody, they know to think about you.
Yeah.
Even if they do 10 deals a year, if you do one deal with them, you're one of 10 names in their head instead of 3,000 names, right?
Yeah.
So once you've done a deal with them, they think of you. I mean, I'm consistently getting messages from people that I've done deals with because they know that I can take them down, that I'll actually act on it instead of just like, oh man, that's not a good enough deal, or oh, it's not perfect, or whatnot, and kind of give them the runaround. Or at least I'll be clear with them and just say that just doesn't work for me.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of tire kickers out there.
Yeah. Well, and part of it is tire kickers, but there's different kinds. There's ones that are really genuinely trying to learn, and then there's ones that are almost feel they have this fixed mindset of feeling like the world is against them, to the point where they're essentially saying, I'm never going to find any good deals. And because they have that mindset, no deals are ever good enough for them, even if they're great numbers. Right? They don't go through the due diligence of actually looking at these deals and running the numbers to be able to say $250 a month, that either is or is not good enough for me. And if it's your first deal, $250 a month, great. And maybe when you get down the road and you're comparing it to 4 and 450, maybe it's not as attractive. But right now, most of the time on the MLS for Abilene, I can get 250 or 250 or 275 cash flow off the MLS. So again, that's more turnkey, but these are properties that are listed at 80. I offer 70, settle around 72 or so, and I can cash flow those pretty well. So they're out there, but I think right now you'll have to kind of transition from they come to me to I go hunt for them.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Real quick on the MLS thing, I wonder if, I should put a little, I'm putting some energy into that and working with a realtor. And I probably need to are you also finding that you're getting, you know, close to that 70% of purchase to rehab off the MLS, or is that the part where you're probably leaving a little more money in the deal?
Yeah, I am leaving money in those deals. So I
Okay.
start out and I essentially just do 20% down. So if it's 80, I've got to show up with, well, if it's 80 and I offer 70, essentially, I got to show up with 15 grand to close.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then down the road, I'll refinance. But I'm not going to refinance for like 9 months or maybe a year.
But you'll come in. Yeah. Okay. Got it. That
And then
makes
I'll
sense.
try and cash out. Because essentially, that it's weird. Like you take a property, if you get an appraisal on it for say 130, and let's say you got all in at 70, you're like, oh, I've got 50 grand. I could just put that on the market. But having it appraised at that amount and having the market actually realize that amount with an offer aren't the same thing. Sometimes the offer is going to be much higher, and sometimes it's actually going to be lower because the market varies. So it's dynamic, it's very dynamic. So the way that appraisers use their method for being able to say what your house is worth is using comps for like the last few months, 3 months or so. And so that actually can work in your favor when you're refinancing a house that you legitimately might not be able to sell. This actually, I've got a property just up the street that's just like this. I bought it for 108 and I refinanced 9 months later after doing nothing to it, refinanced it at 130. That house could not sell for 130 right now. I put together my due diligence packet. I told them why I believe that it's worth a certain amount of money. But I don't think I could sell it. I think it's worth 140, but I don't think I could sell it right now on the open market at that amount
Huh.
because people don't see its value, right? So it's different. You as a home buyer looking at that house say, there's no way I'm paying 140 for it. But as an appraiser, all of the numbers justify that 140, right?
Yeah.
So there's a very realistic situation where you could do a turnkey property, put 15 in, and then in 6, 9 months or so, refinance. You're gonna have to pay the refinancing cost, three, maybe $4,000,
Yeah.
but you might be able to pull some of your initial investment out
Yeah.
if you're able to up it. So, but that requires you essentially saying, I've got 15 grand to play with and just let it sit.
Yeah. And you really, I mean, you're hoping for the appreciation. I mean, that's not a decent play. I'd probably keep that as a plan B play.
Well, it's not necessarily true appreciation. It's, let's say they put it on the market at $100,000 because that's what the market, the comps say, or let's say the comps say 90, but they
Yeah.
put it at 100 because their house is special, right? Everybody's house is special. But then nobody wants it at 90. They bump it down to 80 and you offer 70 and it's been 6 months and they're so frustrated. They say like 72, but really the comps say 90, right? So you're almost at 80% there, right?
Got it. Yeah. So
So then
the,
in 6 months, essentially you run those comps again, or you have the appraiser run those comps again through a different lending institution. And they say, yeah, oh, this is a $100,000 house. So now you've got your 20% equity, right?
yeah, basically it's you finding you buying it below market.
Right.
The difference is buying it below market on the MLS just because it doesn't have that
Right.
interest, and also the difference between how an
Mhm.
appraiser looks at a property versus a home buyer, and
Right.
using that to your advantage and going at it strategically.
Yeah.
That's yeah,
Well,
that
and
makes
maybe, I mean, what you realistically could do is put $3,000, maybe $5,000 into it, something low, but you
sense.
get it off the MLS. You could potentially even buy off the MLS using hard money or private money, but buy it and then refinance pretty quickly, showing that you did a little bit and just refinance with a different institution.
Yeah, and I guess I mean if it's habitable, you wouldn't even need to go hard money. You could just use a
Right.
regular conventional loan. I mean, you'd be able to close faster.
Yeah,
You
just
know,
the difference between the two is, yeah, the close rate and the amount of money that you've got to put in. For a hard money lender, you've only got to put 10% down,
oh, good point. Yeah.
right? So if you find one that's doing 90, 100 terms, 100% of
Yeah.
rehab, but they'll probably only do up to 75% ARV. And the way that they calculate the value of the house is going to be important there. If they calculate the value of the house based on comps and you just say, look, this thing's worth 100 and I'm getting it at 72. And then I'm going to put a couple grand in, right? It might be a little bit harder sell for them, but for private money, I mean, you're going to have to pay them back no matter what. So I don't
Yeah.
think it would be as hard of a conversation to justify there.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Um,
I wouldn't rely on the MLS.
no, I'm certainly not planning. I know I need to just hit the ground harder with wholesaler hunting.
Yeah.
and continue that and kind of put my first energy there and then my second energy towards maybe starting to keep an eye on the MLS
Yeah.
sort of a deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like do your best to go find deals. Like think about it like maybe you even say this week, I'm going to find 10 deals. I'm going to find 10 deals no matter what. And so you go find a wholesaler, and if they don't have a deal, great, put them on your list, but they don't count because you didn't find a deal. Right. And you could go use the MLS, but you really have to then qualify what you mean by deal so that you don't end up essentially cheating yourself. Right. Because the goal here is for you to be able to find more deals.
Deals. Yes.
So then if you find 10 wholesalers that each have one deal, that's awesome. But the reality is you probably found 30 wholesalers along the way. 20 of them didn't have active deals right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially adjusting what your North Star is. And my North Star has been wholesalers, and there's advantage to that, especially long term. But in the short term, really, I need to find deals. That's
Right.
where I'm like, I don't need wholesalers. I do need deals.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess is a good way to put it. Okay, that's pretty helpful. That helps me with my focus. So I appreciate that.
Good. Good.